I'm Mel Stewart, and this is Swim Swam Podcast. Today, we are discussing a tectonic shift in our sport, one that may have the biggest impact in swimming for a generation. Thanks for joining us. You got to tune in. This is breaking news. Last week, FINA's Technical Congress saw the passing of a powerful proposed change to Rule SW 10.8. As of January 1st, 2023, the use of technology and automated data collection devices is permissible for the sole purpose of collecting data. That's in races. However, automated devices shall not be utilized to transmit sounds or signals to swimmers and may not be used to aid their speed. What does that mean? Wearables to collect data for research, education, entertainment is legal in races. However, that data cannot be used in real time in races to aid swimmers' speed. So no feedback to swimmers while they're racing. One of the few select companies to maximize this FINA ruling is technology behemoth Triton Ware. Today we have CEO Tristan Lehari of Triton Ware to help us understand what this means. I'm going to give the floor to you because I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. I have opinions, but I want to hear from the expert.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me. Yeah, this is big news in the sport. So we're really excited to see this happen. We've been looking to see this happen for years, and glad to see swimming catch up with other sports. From my side of things, I think there's a variety of impacts that this is going to have. The most obvious, naturally being access to race data is going to be big. That's going to drive a lot of insights in the sport, and it's going to drive change in the sport, all the way up to, we could potentially see the entire sport growing as a result of this because of broadcast data being available for viewers and making maybe the sport more entertaining for people that are not ingrained in the swimming industry, making the sport make sense for people that are not swimmers. So there's a huge variety here that'll make this extremely exciting and really impactful on the long term.
So let's give people a little bit of a teaser and put this in context. If you're a sports fan and you're watching soccer, or you're watching American football or basketball or any sport, baseball, you have this enormous data dump and fans dive into the minutia of that data. It keeps them engaged, keeps them excited. In swimming, we haven't had it. We've had a few metrics, and it's because network television, NBC, BBC, whoever has it, they're coming in and they're groaning and they're going, God, you guys are 20, 30 years behind the times, and they do it. That's over. You have this. I've seen your dashboard. I've gone through your dashboard, and the amount of data for swimmers that's applicable and makes sense and is within the language of the sport that coaches and athletes understand. You've got it all. I got to take a step back, and I don't mean to chew up the screen, but we've worked with you guys over the years, and it began as, hey, Mel, hey, it's Tristan. This is what we have. We're going to come in and we want to give you a deep dive on data with our dashboard for NCAA championships and the Olympic Games, World Championships, and we've done that. Years. Some we might miss it for 3 months, and when we don't have it, our audience says, "Hey, where's this?" They want to see what's going on. Sure. So give us just a short teaser, and then let's go back to the beginning. But give us a short teaser of what this might look like for an NBC or a BBC.
Yeah, for sure. I think having this data live in a race, not just for the athletes or not just for the coaches on deck or whatever, having this on a screen for the general audience, first of all, gives a lot more excitement to the race. I think to the average person, to help them see what's going well, what's going poorly, without having to understand what a good stroke and a bad stroke looks like. I think that's big. I think the awareness of what all the data means will come into play with the actual broadcasters themselves when they have access to it, and the conversation is going to change. I'm sure the same way baseball changed pretty drastically when numbers came in heavily into baseball. So I think it just makes it so much more exciting, so much more engaging, makes the way that audiences outside of the sport can really take part and be engaged in it. And if we can attract more people to watch the sport, we can attract more people to the sport. So I think that's a long-winded impact that can happen from this kind of a ruling. And I'm really excited to where that will take us.
Let's just take one more second on this. And so there, everybody knows this data point, the reaction time on the start. What is a data point where people are going to see this from the TritonWear deep dive and they're going to be like, this one data point is consequential to determine who is going to win this race, and it's consistent across a lot of races? What's one or two data points?
For sure. I think some of the big things push off, like max acceleration off the wall or push off strength. I think some of those elements and seeing how they deteriorate throughout a race are going to be extremely telling. Something we always tell the swimmers is as soon as we leave the wall, we're slowing down the rest of the length. So if we're losing speed off that push off, we're going to feel that later in that length. So seeing that deteriorate in the race will be extremely interesting. Seeing how stroke efficiency changes. Actual change in speed in a stroke cycle, how that does change over the course of a race as people get tired and sloppy and hips drop. I think that kind of stuff would be extremely powerful as well. And then naturally things that we currently use like stroke rates and changes in stroke rates or stroke rate variations through the length will have a big impact and be really understandable for people. So there's so many things we can dive into there. There's, we track 30 plus data points that we can be throwing on a screen. I think the conversation is now what's going to be the most valuable and interesting to the everyday audience to really drive a narrative that's exciting for everyone.
I could hear the swim nerds and fans now talking about, whoa, X swimmer, it was exploding, but off that third wall, they just lost their juice. There's no pop. The data points do make it more exciting. So let's bring it back to the beginning. And just in terms of having this, I'm a coach and I can capture race data from my athletes, and I have that data to help me be a better coach. What is the meaning of that, and how is that going to impact coaches and swimmers and relationship and improvement?
For sure. I think, around the world, data has existed in races in some capacity for a really long time. We work with national federations all around the world, and they're all tracking some level of data by recording video and manually annotating that video to tell them what are the stroke rates, what are the push-off distances, et cetera. So that's existed at the top level. I think the benefit of now having technology being able to be used in a race is it's now democratizing the use of data to all levels of athletes. So this means that the average club level athlete can be wearing a device and doesn't need an army of sports scientists to analyze that data. It'll give them access to that information. It'll then give the coach access to that information so they can focus on what is actually holding the athlete back. And that's just based on existing data points. So that's kind of step one, is existing data that's on, that's on everybody's stopwatches and things like that right now. It will automate that process. The next big step from that is there's a lot of data you cannot capture manually that you genuinely need sensors to track with, whether that's acceleration, speeds, depth, heart rate, et cetera. There's so many things that you cannot track manually that this now opens the door for. So there's a whole new realm of data collection that's now possible that never has been, and will basically unlock elements of an athlete's stroke and race strategy that we've never known before. So it's going to unlock new levers that will help coaches make changes based on what's actually happening in a race and where true strengths and weaknesses lie.
Data is democratizing everything. It's empowering everybody if they'll embrace it. The interesting thing is that going back to the 1980s when you'd always have to travel up to Colorado Springs, and it was painful how much we would have to go through for them to collect all the data that was needed. Yeah. But it was very eye-opening. And if you think about it, from the highest level, 28-time Olympic medalist Michael Phelps, he was always going with Coach Bob Bowman to Colorado Springs, and they would say that these moments in that training at the Olympic training camp were consequential to their success. Now, way more data is possible for a coach for a small team in the middle of Iowa, or some far-flung city in the outback of Australia, than at the U.S. Olympic Training Center with TritonWear. Let's be a little democratic here. Is there anybody out that is there another company that has this many data points, even has 20% of the data points that you have?
Yeah, I don't think so. There's nobody anywhere near the level of data that we have, let alone accuracy and getting that data live and et cetera. So yeah, we're definitely positioned here.
Why is that? Why is that? Because it's a, yeah, I mean, you have a background and a passion for swim, but it is a unique situation. You've latched onto this and you've been at it for a very long time. Why focus all your energies in swim?
Yeah, I think the nature of the way that we started off in the industry was we began with competitive swim. That's our focus. That's our bread and butter. To do that, we began by having to be really accurate with our data. We had to provide high value, high accuracy data. That snowballed into needing to give more data to be more valuable, and then build models of athletes. We needed more data to be give a holistic understanding of the athlete. So we just snowballed by really focusing on what the competitive swimming world needs. And the fact that we've been around since 2014 has allowed us to basically just have this monumental lead in the industry. And just again, that resounding focus on competitive swim, not getting necessarily distracted by what the consumer market wants or fitness athletes. Like, we want to make sure we really solve a high value point in this market and make sure that we really do a great job for our customers before moving on. So there's a lot of room for that. And that's really what separated us, I think, from the competition.
I want to get into data education, but I would like to. I'm aware of a lot of coaches, particularly a lot of coaches who were just their first movers there, and they are engaged, and they're on the leading edge of the sport, and we know that they're the ones that are not have a sense of insecurity and fear that I've got to adopt, I've got to move faster. But there's something that was crucial missing within this massive data set, and that is race data. Mm-hmm. That is, the coach has all this data from a training season. You swim differently in races, and you want to match what's happening in a race when the emotions are high. You want to match that to your training. You want to hit those levels at certain points in training. What does it mean to be able to have race data now?
Yeah, I think having race data as a starting point. I think when people see this rule change, they're like, oh, that sounds good. That sounds cool. And they won't think too much of it. And then you realize, wait, if I have access to this race data, so do all my competitors, and they all have understandings now of what their athletes are doing well and poorly. That's going to change the trajectory that those athletes are now training at and improving at. And there's going to come a point where if I don't track my races and I don't understand those things that those other athletes are seeing through data that they are getting automatically with advanced metrics like sensor data, I'm going to be behind. At the end of the day, it's going to be the equivalent to not having a full body racing suit when full body racing suits were legal. You're going to be at a disadvantage. You're going to get left behind. And that's just inevitable, regardless of if it's us or somebody else doing it. You're going to need to track data in races, and I think it's good for the sport. It's going to improve trajectory of the sport, but it's something that I think this will be the thing that kicks people in gear if they're late movers on this. They will need this data at the end of the day if they want to be better, if they want to improve their athletes. They'll need it.
It's fun. It's interesting. I wanted the relationship with you just because I knew that I had this deficiency and I needed to learn more, I needed to educate myself. I'm somebody that sees swimming through the lens of the 80s and 90s. So that's why I really tried to foster this relationship with you. And it's, but you said something, and you said this a long time ago to me. You said, if we can have this moment where they allow this to happen, FINA allows this to happen, this would be a monumental historic moment, and it would have an impact the way tech suits did. And everybody remembers what tech suits did for swimming. Swimming took off. Yeah. We had a 2009 World Championships where it was world record after world record. Yeah. But you added this quick caveat. You said, but it's going to be knowledge based. It's not going to be a cheat suit. Yeah. It's going to be actual education. And so what you just said then reminds me of something you said a very long time ago. You're a soothsayer.
I think that's the story at the end of the day. When we see suits or running shoes and running or whatever, like changing speeds of people, it's not actual athletic improvement. It's not necessarily improvement of the sport. It's improvement of something in the race or in the technology that was used. This is actually going to improve how athletes train. It's going to improve how athletes get faster. This is going to improve that rate of development of athletes so they can get faster. They're going to unlock those weaknesses so they can work on them and actually genuinely get faster as athletes, regardless of other inputs to the system. So yeah, this is something that will genuinely change the sport and take it to the next level. So I think it's extremely exciting.
I think all coaches coaches are intuitive. They are, if you've read Malcolm Gladwell's Blink, they have all the sophistication, They can take a look at something and they immediately know. But these types of coaches and athletes love to be surprised, and they love to innovate, and they love having this old assumption that can be proven wrong. And data does that. Data points to all your weak spots. And the difference between average and good and great and having history or international medals is covering all those weaknesses and all those blind spots. So it sounds like that's from top to bottom, that's going to be the difference.
Absolutely.
Is there anything more that you could say in terms of just data education?
Yeah, I think with data itself, I think there's certain metrics that every coach knows. Every coach knows stroke rate, every coach knows time, every coach knows some key elements that they directly correlate to higher performance. I think by having data in your face all the time, coaches and athletes are going to get just passively educated on all the different data points that are available and what is a good number for a variety of metrics. And what does this mean? What does this mean? So I think the education that comes from just having that data all the time in your face is going to be extremely beneficial for the just general education of data in the market. It's something that I think it's been somewhat sporadic, just based off of what data points have been available historically. But with that kind of increased volume of data, it's just going to help drive that awareness, drive that education, not just for the elites, but all the way down, and help us really understand what metrics are making a big difference. What skill-based metrics are making a difference at what levels? What should I really be focusing on for each athlete that I'm working with to make sure that we are taking the whole sport to the next level? And data education is the biggest way that that's going to happen. Regardless of what company is doing it, education awareness to data is going to drive the entire sport in the right direction. Which is going to be great for the entire sport.
Something that's interesting is and I didn't anticipate it, but my wife came up with a name for Swim Swam, and she's a non-swimmer. And before we launched, no one said swammer. It was just this weird word, but people say swammer as a form. Oh, I'm a swammer. I think that there's going to be a term that it's going to become ubiquitous. It's going to become something we see in social. Coaches are going to use it, and it's going to be continually said over and over and over, driven by data. It's going to be swim IQ.
Yeah.
What is your swim IQ? And swim IQ is going to be this one thing where I can look at someone racing, and I can pull up my TritonWear app, and I have high swim IQ because I know their metrics deeply.
Well, and with that, I guess I'll jump in there as well. I think one of the even easier ways for people to understand what's going to happen here is, right now we have time standards that we aim for, no matter what level of an athlete that I am, whether I'm juniors, whether I'm going to nationals, whether I'm trying to qualify for the Olympics, AB times, whatever that is. I have times. But what we're going to have now, because we're going to have access to this data at all these levels, for all levels of athletes in every country around the world, we're now going to have this massive database that we can build standards, not just based on time, but based on speed underwater, push-off acceleration, stroke rates, distance per stroke, time, whatever it is, all the different metrics we're going to have as inputs and targets that we can be aiming for. So it's going to basically unlock and kind of demystify what it takes to make an Olympic final. What does it take to get to the Olympics? Not just based on these times that maybe 4 or 6 years out seem almost unattainable for an athlete, but what skills do I need to do? What inputs do I need to put into the system to have that time happen at the end of the race? So this is going to be just from an awareness education perspective, that's just going to bleed it down into the entire industry and the entire swing community in a really positive way, I think.
It's something that we haven't done. We've done it. It's been kind of fun in terms of just engaging an audience and engaging fans and engaging swimmers who are watching the elites. And like Rowdy Gaines, we'll do the call for NBC. He loves reaction times. Man, he loves reaction times. But it's like, do we have do you take reaction times across an entire event or a season or 10 seasons and go, this is the world champion of reaction time. This is the world champion of speed on the push off. But having a leaderboard for that type of data, that's something that we can have now with athletes wearing wearables, and that does drive engagement.
Yeah, engagement drives education, drives all the right things. We're gonna see athletes understanding what it takes to get there. And it's, that just organically increases the swim IQ, like you mentioned. So I think by doing all those things, by passively educating everybody on data, having an understanding of really what's happening in a race, not just from a basic level perspective, but a more advanced sensor-based perspective as well, we're gonna really increase the rate of improvement in the sport. If this gets you, at a large enough scale, we're gonna see the trajectory of improvements happening at a much higher rate. We're gonna see that ceiling pushed a bit faster. And so I think there's a lot of developments that this kind of comes with that will help athletes improve faster and maybe improve what ceiling they thought they had and might have hit otherwise.
I don't know how much you can talk about this, because I know that as somebody who is, when you come to a market and you're an innovator, you're trying to improve. You're trying to improve something that you care about, which is what you've done at swim. I don't know what you can share, but how long has this discussion gone on in the background at the international governing body at FINA about the ability to wear, wearables in races?
Yeah, I mean, we've been, it's been probably 4+ years that we've had this conversation at various levels to figure out, how we can do this and how do we make it happen in a way that's fair to the sport. We don't want to have something that can be cheated. We don't want something that's going to be, misused in a way that's going to be unfair to other athletes. We want to make sure that this is purely as a tool to help us improve the sport. And the way that it was worded in this rule change was really well done. It's not giving data to athletes in a race. It's not changing anything about their race. It's allowing us to use it after the fact. We can use it live in broadcast as well, naturally, to make it more exciting. But really, there's no way to get that data to an athlete, in the pool while they swim. So it's not going to change anything about the swim race dynamics. It's just going to give us awesome insight into how to get better, how to improve the sport, how to get people more excited about the sport.
I was aware of what happened last week at FINA, and I was aware from the intentional relationship with you in terms of my continuing education. So I was aware of what this impact meant, and I was also aware that this wasn't a curated press release from them, and I'm aware that we're engaging FINA and asking questions and talking to people, but I knew this would take some time. And it's interesting that I'm wondering who's going to look back on this moment and say, yeah, this was that moment where we planted the flag in history and things began to change. So we're going to reach out to FINA. We've already reached out to FINA, but we're going to reach out to a few different folks at FINA, and we're going to keep following up on this topic. And as there's new iterations and new possibilities for data collection in races and what it means, will you come back and talk us through it?
Absolutely. That sounds great.
Did I cover everything? Is there anything that we're missing here that's obvious?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I think we kind of went through all the key things. I think hammering home also the potential to grow the sport by getting people engaged that are not in the sport. I think we hit that at the beginning, but yeah.
This is my hope for the sport. And this is, I hope everybody out there listens to this. I hope that and I know this happens now because I talk to the parents and I talk to the kids. It's, every so often I hear from mom and dad, or I hear from a 10-year-old, and this 10-year-old is smarter than they could sit next to an analyst on a national broadcast, and they know everything.
Yeah.
And I was that way when I was a kid. I can't wait to meet those kids who have this deeper knowledge of the sport, and I know that it's their generation that's going to take it and really run with it. So when we have that kid, we're going to have to bring them on and see how smart they are, see how high their swim IQ is. I appreciate you coming on, buddy.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.